Okay. Plains Energy just bought Pogo the other day. Plains had revenue of $1 billion and net profit of $600 million. That's how good it is in the oil business. They bought Pogo, who had a revenue of 1.7 and net income of 450 million. Wonderful profits. ExxonMobil had $400 billion revenue and had $40 billion net profit. And everybody's complaining about that. But it's not near like the other ones. But it's good, and it should be. But the worst thing is OPEC, the foreign nations, had revenue of $650 billion and their cost was only $150 billion, so they have $500 billion to play with. And that money is very expensive to us because it's funding terrorists, it's funding rogue nations, it's funding leaders in foreign countries that is going to cost the United States a ton of money to overcome. It's Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Venezuela, Russia, Angola. All of these countries are having excess money. And the money is just flowing all over. and it's bringing terrorism, it's bringing all the things we don't want. and so that's our problem.
So here's a question for you. Do we know for a fact that all those countries that you just mentioned are responsible for the terrorism?
No,
that's not the correlation that you're trying to make.
No, I'm okay. Saying some of that money flows and funds terrorism type things.
Okay.
But they've got money to do things, and now the United States doesn't have the hegemony to be the leadership role. And we're almost losing it militarily.
Why are we losing it?
Well, because they've got more money to do, and they're developing money.
But we started, though. We started this whole thing, didn't we?
We started what?
We started in the oil industry. We created
this
type of...
sure.
So why are we now positioning ourselves in such a negative and such a deficit? Why are we in the deficit?
Well, because our natural resources have been depleted, and we're finding new resources around the rest of the world. That's the problem. All these people around here have tried to make a national energy policy. I had a national energy policy, proposed it. Lukman, the other guy from Indonesia, the Secretary General, wrote and says, don't do that, that'll hurt us. The problem for the energy of the United States is we have one world oil price based at Cushing, Oklahoma, New York Merc. And that one oil price is always wrong. It's too high, it's higher than necessary for the rest of the world, and it's not high enough for the United States. So with that thing, we're always going to become more and more dependent on foreign energy. And so we're up to 60% dependent on our foreign oil. And so after World War II, we were producing half the world's oil. Right. And we fueled World War II out of the Gulf Coast here. Now, but that has changed. So we needed a 2 oil price. That's what I proposed. Didn't get it anywhere, didn't go anywhere, other than a few people accepted it and thought it was good, but nothing was ever taking place. Now, the next problem, I've proposed to have it on the table, it's been there 3 years, can't get it anywhere, is a rock problem, and it's because it's all about who controls the oil money over there. All they're trying to do, all these other guys, all the people, are just trying to change the faces. And those faces, when they change the next year or next administration, they will go bad. And so what I want to do is change the economic system of distribution of oil wealth.
Explain that.
I have proposed to the Bush administration and to the government that somebody set up a upstream oil company and make it a limited partnership, a general partner, and with all of the people, all of the adults of Iraq being limited partners. And all of the oil money would go directly to the people. And then if the people want security, they can buy it through the government, or if they want utilities, they can buy it through the government. If they want food, they can do whatever they want to, because they have the money. That's the problem. That's one of the reasons the United States is so great, is because we have private property rights. They don't have that, and none of these governments do it. It's the oil curse. When you find oil in your country, man, it always gets bad. The people, all of the nations that do that have that. They take the oil money and they fund their friends and police their enemies. And now we're having to go over and police Africa and various other nations of the world because they can't get along on the oil money. And that's what we're doing over in Iraq right now. So if we can get this process, if I can get that process sold to the Iraqi people and have that money, the oil money, go to each one, it would be about $3,000 a year. Man, those people that are destitute over there and had $3,000, and they knew they was going to get it, pretty soon they'd be buying a car and buying a house and buying education and things. And then say, hey, we better have police too. And so they'd have their self-police.
Well, let me ask you a question. In the beginning, those people had their own philosophy, their own standard of life, their own standard of living. Some of them were not living under high levels according to what the United States definition is, but according to their own definition, they were doing pretty good. What is it that you can possibly say to them, or we as the United States could possibly say to them and convince them that this is something that would be a viable scenario for them? What is it that you think that should be said to the people as well as to the government to believe this?
Well, the people should own the natural resources collectively. In here, we had it by property rights on surface, but over there, they ought to be given to them personally. It would give them money to let them decide what they want in government. All of these people over there, the United Nations, all the governments, all they think the answer is the government can make this solution. Governments do not make any solutions. They just can't do it. And so they have to be subservient to the people, and then the governments can do something. But other than that, they won't do it. This Constitution that they're passing over there is wrong. It's more government. The government's going to fix everything and this and that. The government won't fix it. The people have got to want it fixed, and if the people got some money, they can do that. But they don't have any money to do that, and they don't have any interest in doing it. I am studying right now, the best I can, of why Western civilization is beating Eastern civilization. And it has a lot to do with lots of things, including religion.
Well, here's the other part of the question in that statement. Don't you think it's just a matter of time? And the reason why I say time is because everyone has a period of time in talking about history, cultures, or civilizations. Each one had a time in which they rose and then they fell. And they rose and then they fell.
Sure.
So right now...
Rise and fall.
Exactly. Exactly. Sure. So don't you feel that, if anything, especially in light of the fact that the United States is in debt to China for so much money, don't you feel that at this particular point in time, if the powers that be do not reevaluate their present direction, that we will be on the falling end of another civilization?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so tell me.
I'll tell you what the difference is.
Okay.
It's freedom.
Okay.
Everybody wants to come to here. I don't know anybody that wants to go to China or
I
other
understand.
nations.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I understand what you're saying as far as the freedom is concerned. Please, I'm glad that I was born here as well. My point, though, is that we are in debt to China.
Oh, sure. We're in debt to the rest of the world.
Billions and billions of dollars.
That's what I was telling you right here on the New York Financial Center. We're going to lose that leadership role in the United States. That's what's going to lose us our hegemony in the world. The world needs a benevolent leader like the United States has been for the last 60 years. They really do need that. I don't know what we'd do without us, because those other countries are not going to be benevolent. Germany and Japan and all these others, they're fine. They're just, nothing's happening with them.
Dale, would they consider us benevolent in this, underneath this administration?
Well, I would hope they would, but they don't see it that way. They think we're overbearing and want to do this. But we're paying the whole darn world's cost right now. They were buying, what's our biggest imports? Toys from China. And they're getting all the money. What do they do with the money? Well, they're worried right now because the only place they got to invest is in the United States, and the dollar's falling.
Yeah, but the other part of that, when we decided to go to other countries and rebuild infrastructure, we borrowed money from foreign nations. So in borrowing our money from foreign nations, we borrowed from China as well.
Well, we didn't borrow much from China. I don't think we borrowed much from them. I challenge that a little bit.
Okay.
Because I don't think that we borrowed money. The source of most of the money is still New York. And that's where, and London's got some too. But the world is starting to build up capital, and we're getting this with all of the hedge funds, and we're going to lose control. We used to be able to control the market because we could watch it and rate it and this. Now the hedge funds, we can't rate them, and so all of a sudden they're going to have a whole bunch of them lose lots of billions of dollars. They're going to say, "Wait a minute, how come you didn't tell me?" Just like this prime lending loss. And there's several of those. The bank in China and the natural gas company in Boston lost $6 billion to it. Okay, those are things that we're going to have to pay for some way, or somebody's going to have to watch, and they're going to say, well, wait a minute, I don't want to trust you with my money unless you've got somebody. Well, we had a rating company say it was good, and what else? Well, who's going to pay? This is and the prime loan problems we got around here. That I'll tell you, the bankers, the money people ought to pay because they didn't check it out, and they shouldn't have been lending money to people that couldn't pay their bills. I mean that's just a fact in there. I don't blame them for trying to get a new home and moving up and everything else, and the opportunity was there. It wasn't them that was causing the problem. It's the people that give them the money, and so they ought to lose the money. But the financial people are going to try and wipe that over and get the government to pay it, and nobody's going to lose.
Except for the people that lose their homes.
Well, there'll be some of those, sure. Yeah. But what they ought to do is just mark the home down so the payment pays for it.
Say that again? They mark the home down so that the payment pays for it?
Sure.
What does that mean?
Well, instead of they bought a $100,000 house and their payment was such so that they could afford that, well, mark the home down to $60,000 and that payment will pay that.
Okay. Okay. Never thought of it like that. Tell me a little bit about your background. Let's begin at the beginning, which we didn't do. Introduce yourself for me, please.
I'm Dale Steffes. I'm a long time, been in Houston 40 years. Been on my own for 35 years. Living as an energy consultant and fighting all the way, scratching, fighting, everything, arguing. I'm known as the Cassandra of crude. And I've been in '86. People really did hate me because I called the downturn in oil prices, and it went from $25 down to $15 and stayed there for 15 years. Wow. and so that was a hurt. It's going to happen. The oil price is going to go back down sometime. I will call it, and when I call it, it'll be there. Others people won't do it. Anyway, that's what else do you want to know about me?
I would like to know a little bit about the Houston Energy Chamber of Commerce.
It's a DBA. The Houston Energy Chamber of Commerce is just a DBA. It's essentially, I set it up, and I wear 3 hats. It's the Energy Chamber of Commerce and the Planning and Forecasting Consultants and the World Energy Ministers Association. These 3, and they're all just DBAs trying to help this. I want to help Houston. I want Houston to stay the energy capital, and I'm working hard to do that. I wanted to bring the World Energy Ministers Association to Houston in '98. I got no support here. And in 2000, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia says, I want that same type of organization, but I want to have it in Riyadh. And now today he has it in Riyadh, and the United States belongs to it. There's nobody over there to making decisions, but they've got the money and they're funding it. It's there. It needs to be in Houston, and that needs to be here. And all of the ministers come to here, and so we can work out deals. And that's how oil fields are found and things, is you have trust in each other, and so you need a central place for it. That's why it ought to be the energy capital here. Now, we're having a big problem because many of the oil companies are now having their country have an oil company instead of the private oil companies like Exxon and Chevron and so this is a problem for the industry, but it still needs to be done. And there's going to be a lot of things going on over there. Some smaller companies go over there and in the Middle East and do it. Hunt is going over to Iraq now. I'm not sure he should, but that's his decision. It's his money. I don't know who's going to protect him in there. Anyway.
Tell me a little bit more about Houston Now, I see what you're saying in terms of positioning Houston. Tell me about some of the energy organizations that exist here in Houston and how you can get them to understand that Houston definitely needs to become the hub, the energy hub. Because like right now, for example, there's the World Energy Cities Partnership Conference that is taking place in Angola. It's supposed to be taking place on the 16th, 17th,
Sure.
18th.
Secretariat is here.
And the Secretariat is here.
Yeah.
All right. So share with us, some my listeners and my viewers, some of your thoughts concerning that.
Well, I think that's wonderful. I think that was formed before, and the city took it over, and now the Greater Houston Partnership runs that Oil Cities thing. And it's a nice organization, and it helps each other when they go to each other for ports and meetings, et cetera. And I think that's wonderful. They got another association over there that deals with energy people, too, and they're all doing it. I just think they ought to be doing this one. And
Why? Show the benefits of that.
Because it would be more inclusive, and it has data. And also dealing with this, we have a model that nobody else has. I guarantee you my model is better than anybody else's. Guy Crusoe is the Department of Energy spends $80 million a year on his model. And he's saying, well, we're going to have to change it. We're going to improve it a little bit this year. I'm so happy with that. That isn't funny. I think it needs to be done. Because there's no data. The United States has the best data of all, and it's not right.
And they're basing the data on what? On ships?
Well, the trade, they base their trade data on shipments of oil out there. Petrologistics upstairs of a grocery store over Geneva, he keeps track of them. And so he's one of the places that you go to find out about it. Well, the way the thing works is all of the countries say how much they produce. They supposedly report that. OPEC reports it and various other things. It's mostly that ship. Then they take inventories, and they count the inventories, and so somebody says, okay, the inventories are up a little bit. Using those two numbers, then they say how much the consumption was. And so it's just three numbers that are kind of always mixed around there. But everybody's using them. And so and they judge their financing and the trading on it based on that. But then eventually it evolves back, and they kind of resolve it and kind of solve it a little better. And so that becomes a set of data for the industry. But they don't, and they can't do anything with dollars in it. My model has the dollars in it. It keeps track of where the dollars are in each one. And it's so important that they do that. First off, this is my management model. And they don't have this. I guarantee you they don't have it. It's extremely simple. I do two things, planning and forecasting consultants. And forecasting is you forecast the assumptions, what the assumptions are. I have an assumption generator with these things. It tells me what the population is. They think population is growing. In the developed world, population is a problem because it's not growing. They're having to pay people to have children in Europe and Russia. And so this is a real problem, because if those developed nations don't need energy, and how are they going to pay for their adults or their seniors if they don't have the young children coming behind? If the system is designed that way. Anyway, this model is extremely important in that, because this is planning and this is forecasting. That's what I do. This is how you operate. This is the accounting. The accounting that's what happened to Enron. They didn't get the accounting right. And the same thing, we're still doing the accounting. Big studies now coming out on world accounting systems to figure out how that's going to be done. Because who's going to say that this is really how much you've produced? Because you always got fudged numbers in there in the system. And then this is our operating and controlling. Now, let me go to my energy model. Got that wrong. My energy model is reserves by consumption, by capita, per capita, and by GNP. Then these flow down here. This is how much we need, and this is how much then the markets here's coal, oil, gas, coal, nuclear, hydro, and residential, commercial, industrial, transportation. These have to flow back and forth. And that's what this particular model here does. In 1999, the world used 362 quadrillion BTU of energy, and we paid $2.6 trillion on it. That was that. This model, and this is the 11 regions that I use to divide the world into. And then I put a list here of showing what percent they produced, what percent they consumed, what their trade was, what their cost was, that $2.6 trillion, what their populations are, what their GNP is, and what their land area is. This model is unbelievably good for knowing what's going to happen. But the data is hard to get, and I work on it all the time, and I know a lot of the data is wrong. Just unbelievable. Madeleine Albright come here some years ago and says, well, I got this data from the CIA. I said, where they get it? Well, they got it from the Oil and Gas Journal. And Houston has some good assets because they got several newspapers and publications that do pretty good data. Oil and Gas Journal, World Oil, and Energy Intelligence. Those are things that they put together and they work on very hard to try to do it. So how much reserves of the world do we have? Are we running out? 2 weeks from tomorrow, they're starting this conference over here at the George Brown. Mm-hmm. We're running out of oil. The peak oil people are going to be there. And they're all going to be saying that. There's a whole group of them, and they're all together, and they believe that. And I don't believe that because they haven't drilled. I know where they've drilled and where they haven't drilled. There are 1 million oil wells in the world today.
1 million.
500,000, half of them are in the United States. And we drill 100,000 a year. And we haven't drilled the rest of the world yet.
Are we talking about also the floors of the ocean? And
we've just now, that is a technology change because we're now drilling in 10,000 feet of water. We didn't have that before. We didn't have that capability. But now we can do that. And most of that capability is based out of Houston. Most of our offshore drilling rigs are out of Houston. That's where we're really strong. Let me see if I can find some, show you here, this production. This is my workbook to have all this stuff, and
well, I'll say one thing, you're totally prepared.
This is a chart showing prospective surface area versus oil reserves. And so these are the 11 regions of the world that I have, and this long arrow says where the reserves are. And so this little area here is the Middle East, and it has all the reserves of the world. Wow. I mean, everybody accepts that. I don't agree with that, but the previous head of USGS says he thought there was more oil in the Latin America than there was in the Middle East. I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's his professional opinion.
On your chart, where do we rank? The United States?
The United States is right here. Here's the United States. It's green right here.
Okay, and where does Africa rank?
Africa is right here. And they got more reserves than we do, but they got huge areas, unbelievable amount of area yet to look at. And so they haven't looked there.
Is that observation being done via satellite?
My observation?
Yeah. I mean, where did you get your data from? Because I know that there are certain technical. There are certain satellites that you can use in order to see what's going on in the world, and
sure.
as well as in the earth.
Well, this is reserves. This is subsurface oil.
Right.
Okay. We don't have that. That's kind of the history that I've put together.
Oh, okay.
In there. This is now. The other day, Oil and Gas Journal, which is one of the main people that do it, and World Oil, those are the main people that put together reserve numbers.
Right.
Marilyn Rattler raised her reserves 100 billion barrels. We went from 1,100 to 1,200 in the world. And she added Canada. She says, okay, that's now economic. The definition of a reserve is that it's economic at today's cost and technology. Okay. And so it's a hazy definition. at $75 oil, we've got a lot more oil than we had at $15 oil.
Okay.
But they didn't change the numbers.
Okay.
And now the same thing is going on with Venezuela. Should we add in their heavy oil or not? That's another 100 billion barrels.
Wow.
And so those are numbers that we need to know, but they don't change them that much. You have to watch them continuously. And so the question, okay, my next chart, this is oil reserves.
Okay.
This is cumulative oil production on the dollars a barrel, and it's going to zero in the Middle East production if they don't lower the price.